President Xi Jinping will attend handover events on July 1st. City's COVID cases fall slightly, but restaurant cluster continues to spread. Outgoing civil service chief says civil servants are back on the right track. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. The official Xinhua News Agency has confirmed President Xi Jinping will attend a ceremony to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the handover and also swear in John Lee as the new chief executive. But it is uncertain whether he will attend the ceremonies in person or via video link. Caleb Leung has details.
As Hong Kong celebrates the 25th anniversary of returning to Chinese rule, the country's top leader is set to celebrate with the SAR. State media Xinhua News Agency reported this morning that President Xi Jinping will attend a meeting celebrating the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's return to the motherland. Xi will also attend the inaugural ceremony of the sixth-term government of the SAR. Xi's last visit to Hong Kong was in 2017 when he attended the 20th anniversary of the establishment of the Hong Kong SAR. He also swore Carrie Lam in as the chief executive during his trip. Accompanied by his wife Peng Liyun, Xi's visit lasted for 3 days. Although Xinhua reported that Xi will attend a meeting to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's handover, the report did not say the president will actually be coming to the city. When asked whether Xi will be in the city in person or attend the event virtually, Tam Yu-chung, the city's sole delegate to the National People's Congress Standing Committee, said he is not sure. But Tam added that this is a minor issue, as Xi's attendance of the ceremonies, no matter in what format, already shows that the president cares about the SAR. Both Chief Executive Carrie Lam and Chief Executive Designate John Lee issued a statement to extend their welcome and gratitude to Xi. Lam said Xi's attendance on July 1st fully shows the importance that Beijing attaches to Hong Kong. Lee said Hong Kong is at the crucial stage of advancing from chaos to governance and gradually towards prosperity. He said he is delighted by the president's attendance on July 1st. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
The police arrested 3 people for allegedly inciting others online to kill government officials and police officers. Equipment such as knives, helmets, airsoft guns and gas masks were confiscated during the police operation. Officers said they discovered some people were allegedly posting hate speech on multiple online platforms against the government and the police. The messages allegedly include inciting others to kill government officials and police officers. The suspects also sold weapons as well as objects commonly used in unlawful assemblies. After an investigation, the police have arrested 3 people aged between 14 and 22. The force says there is no evidence the suspects were targeting events related to July 1st. The city's COVID caseload fell slightly to 1,794 cases today, including more than 100 imported infections. Among the 1,680 domestically acquired cases, health authorities are looking into whether a Chinese restaurant cluster and an elderly care home cluster are related.
3 more customers who visited the Victoria Harbour restaurant in Tuen Mun have tested positive for COVID. So far, 36 diners and 4 close contacts linked to the cluster have come down with the virus. Among the latest confirmed cases, 2 of them are carers at an elderly care home in Tuen Mun. They both visited the Chinese restaurant last Thursday and began developing respiratory symptoms in the next 2 days. So far, 7 residents and 5 carers of the care home have been infected. One newly infected care home resident tested positive on Wednesday. Health authorities say the patient had tested positive in April and believe he was infected again.
These 2 cases are suspected carriers of the BA.2.12.1 subvariant. There are other people related to the cluster. They're also found to be carrying the BA.2.12.1 subvariant, so we suspect there's a link between them. It could be that the transmission happened at the restaurant, but we cannot be sure.
A male patient staying at an oncology ward at the Prince of Wales Hospital was confirmed with COVID on Wednesday. 3 male patients in the same ward and 2 nurses have been infected. The virus-hit ward has stopped receiving new patients or visits. This morning, a freezer that stores BioNTech vaccines at a general clinic in Sai Ying Pun was out of order. After inspecting the items, health authorities said the vaccines are still safe to use.
Over the past day, Macau reported another 80 COVID cases. So far, 170 infections have been registered in its latest outbreak. Macau health authorities say they have identified 8 clusters in this pandemic wave so far. 3 of them have unknown sources of infection. Starting today, all residents must undergo another round of mass testing using rapid antigen tests. Those who test positive must stay home with their family and wait for quarantine arrangements. The enclave has so far completed 1 round of mass testing using RAT and 2 rounds of citywide mandatory testing. Secretary for the Civil Service Patrick Nip will be leaving the government after June 30th. Writing in his social media platform, he said civil servants are now back on the right track. Christy Khan reports.
After decades working for the government, Secretary for the Civil Service Patrick Nip will not be joining the next administration. Writing on a social media platform, Nip shared a snapshot of his work over the past 2 years. He said the government had implemented several measures to further actualize the one country, two systems principle. These include requiring civil servants to take an oath supporting the basic law and be assessed by a national security test. He added 129 civil servants had quit after failing to sign a declaration to uphold the basic law. 54 more civil servants who were suspected to be involved in a 2019 protest have left the government. Nip additionally said a total of 155 civil servants have been sacked in the past 5 years, citing misconduct and criminal offenses. In his post, Nip thanked civil servants for their contribution and hard work amid the pandemic. He said he believes civil servants are now back on the right track and will continue to support the city's new leader and administration. Christy Khan, TVB News.
Former Secretary for Justice Elsie Leung said the new administration should prioritize resolving the city's existing problems over political reform. Leung hopes the new government, under Chief Executive Designate John Lee's leadership, will be able to connect different sectors in the society. She said social issues including housing, the wealth gap and youth employment are important. She added the city will only have the capacity to work on political reform after the current social problems are fixed. President Xi Jinping yesterday chaired the high-level dialogue on global development in Beijing via video link, attended by the BRICS countries as well as many developing countries. She noted that some countries have politicized and marginalized the development issue, imposed sanctions, and stoked divisions. He said protectionism will only isolate those involved. She also said the implementation of the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is encountering difficulties. He noted the North-South gap keeps widening and crises are emerging in food and energy security. But emerging markets and developing countries are more resolved to seek strength through unity. The United States and some of its allies have joined forces to create an informal group aimed at boosting ties with nations which are part of the Pacific Islands. Dubbed the Partners in the Blue Pacific, the US, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom are keen to commit more resources to the area. The Biden administration expects more high-level U.S. official visits to the Pacific Island countries, with Washington keen to boost engagement with the region to counter China's growing economic and military influence. The 5 countries said they are long-standing development partners with the Pacific Islands, reflected in a combined $2.1 billion in assistance for the region. Still to come on tonight's news. U.S. Supreme Court makes hugely controversial ruling on abortion. Deadly shooting in the Norwegian capital, Oslo. And President Volodymyr Zelensky shares Ukraine's difficulties in a TV interview. Well, welcome back to TVB News. The U.S. is reeling from the controversial decision by the U.S. Supreme Court to end 50 years of constitutional protection for abortion. Protests broke out in some cities after the court overturned the 1973 Roe v. Wade law, while President Joe Biden said his administration would fight to protect women's reproductive rights. Nazvi Karim reports.
The United States is a country deeply divided on whether an entity in the womb is a living being or otherwise. On Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court decided the former, voting 5-4 to overturn Roe versus Wade. And for the first time in almost half a century, states have the legal power to ban abortions. Protests broke out in New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco and other cities, where many chanted "Rise up for abortion rights." U.S. President Joe Biden said the decision made his country a laughingstock in the developed world and made the Supreme Court look extreme.
The court literally taking America back 150 years. This is a sad day for the country, in my view. But it doesn't mean the fight's over. I will do all of my power to protect a woman's right in states where they will face the consequences of today's decision. Women must remain free to travel safely to another state to seek care they need. My administration will defend that bedrock right.
Some states are already moving to implement the anti-abortion legislation. Utah, Ohio, Alabama and some others have either written it into law or are in the process of doing so. But California, Washington and Oregon have vowed to form a West Coast front protecting women's reproductive rights.
I am outraged that children today will grow up in a country where girls and women have fewer rights than my generations had. But I know history will show that this Supreme Court ruling does not reflect the true values of our nation, and it certainly doesn't reflect California's values.
In New York, activists are urging lawmakers to establish the state as an abortion sanctuary.
Protection means legal protection for patients who are seeking abortion care in New York from states where abortion is illegal and criminalized, as well as protection for abortion facilitators and abortion providers who are helping those folks seek care.
For pro-life activists, the decision represents the fulfillment of a 50-year fight.
It was like a surreal moment. I didn't believe it was happening. And then after it sunk in, I just had tears streaming down my face. Just tears of, relief, joy.
Meanwhile, in Phoenix, police fired tear gas from the windows of the Arizona Capitol building to disperse hundreds of people demanding abortion rights, as lawmakers briefly huddled in a basement. There were also large gatherings in Boston, while eyewitness reports in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, say a truck hit at least 2 protesters during an abortion rights rally. One woman reportedly was taken to hospital. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Following the Supreme Court's ruling, Joe Biden is urging Americans to vote for pro-choice politicians at this year's congressional elections, at a time when his popularity reaches an all-time low amid rising inflation.
The only way we can secure a woman's right to choose, and the balance that existed, is for Congress to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade as federal law. No executive action from the president can do that. And if Congress, as it appears, lacks the votes to do that now, voters need to make their voices heard. This fall, we must elect more senators and representatives who will codify woman's right to choose into federal law once again. This fall, Roe is on the ballot.
The U.S. House of Representatives has passed a significant gun control legislation for the first time in 3 decades on Friday. It has now been sent for President Joe Biden to sign. Daniel Rell tells us more.
The House voted 234 to 193 for the bill, with no Democrats opposing it. 14 Republicans also supported the legislation. The House vote came after a Senate vote of 65 to 33 on Thursday passed the measure and follows a string of recent mass shootings in the U.S. The bill includes provisions that would help states keep guns out of the hands of those deemed to be a danger to themselves or other people. It would also block gun sales to those convicted of domestic abuse while unmarried. The bill allows access for the first time to information on significant crimes committed by juveniles as part of more stringent background checks. Still, it does not bar the sale of assault-style rifles or high-capacity magazines. While the legislation falls some way short of President Joe Biden's desired gun law revamp, House Democrats called it a step in the right direction.
While it isn't everything we would have liked to see in legislation, it takes us down the road, the path to more safety, saving lives. Let us not judge the legislation for what it does not do, but respect it for what it does.
We're going to continue to work on this forever until our communities and our schools are safe. This bill is a good bill. It saves lives. It's legal.
However, the National Rifle Association, the most powerful gun lobby in the U.S., called the legislation a senseless gun control measure that will only infringe on the rights of the law-abiding. Daniel Rell, TVB News.
In Norway's capital, Oslo, 2 people were killed and 14 were wounded in a shooting at a nightclub. A suspect was apprehended a few minutes after the shooting began in the early hours of Saturday. Police said it could be a possible terrorist attack. The man is a Norwegian citizen of Iranian origin, which is previously known to police but not for major crimes. Police seized 2 firearms in connection with the attack, a handgun and an automatic weapon. The rampage occurred outside the London pub, popular with the LGBTQ community, that came hours before Oslo's Pride Parade was due to take place. Organizers later cancelled all Pride events planned for today. In Ukraine, reports said Russian forces opened fire on villages in the Zaporizhia region with multiple launch rocket systems. Though no casualties have been reported so far, houses could be seen reduced to rubble. About 60% of the region is now under Russian control. This includes the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, the largest in Europe. The International Atomic Energy Agency has said the situation at the plant, where Ukrainian staff are working under the order of Russian troops, could pose a health and safety risk. The agency wants to send a mission there to examine the situation. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces have begun retreating in the Luhansk region after relentless Russian bombardment. As the war continues, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke in an interview about some of the challenging issues his country is facing, including American fighters captured by Russia and being outnumbered by the Russian military 10-1. This report from NBC News.
We met President Volodymyr Zelensky in his office.
Good to see you again.
While he makes many appearances, he does few interviews.
2 Americans answered your call, as many did, to come here and fight for Ukraine's democracy. They were captured. The Kremlin won't rule out that they could face the death penalty. Is there something you would like to say directly to the families of those 2 Americans?
They are heroes. And for me, they are the same like Ukrainians, because they give and they gave the main things they had, their lives. But I'm sure that we'll fight for them and we'll get them back. And of course, they will come back to your families, to their children.
We spoke just moments after Ukrainian troops, under heavy Russian fire for weeks, were forced to withdraw from the city of Severodonetsk in the east, giving Russia a new strategic foothold.
It seems like there's small advances from each side every day and huge numbers of casualties. Can you continue in this? How do you change the stalemate?
Their military outnumbers ours by 10 to 1. No matter how strong we are, they outnumber us by 10 to 1. It is very difficult.
Are you worried that the West will lose interest in Ukraine, become exhausted from this war, focus on other things, and that you'll be increasingly isolated over time?
I am worried about this thing indeed. The war has no boundaries. The war is currently happening in Ukraine, but that means that the war is happening everywhere in the world. I'm sure about that.
President Zelensky thanked the United States and President Biden directly for the weapons he's received so far, but said he needs a lot more.
Back locally, as a celebratory event for the city's 25th handover anniversary, residents will be able to use most of the sports and leisure facilities managed by the Leisure and Cultural Services Department for free next Friday. Residents could begin making their reservations for the facilities from 7 a.m. today. Some people rushed to make their bookings. At around 8 in the morning, the online booking system showed only limited slots were left for badminton and tennis courts in some areas. That's the news for tonight. Thanks for watching.